Early morning at Los Angeles Airport, and it's not a pretty sight. Today I'm going to be flying on Delta Airlines from Los Angeles to New York JFK in Delta-One. That's their business class product at the front of the plane. It gives me access to the Delta Lounge at Los Angeles, as you might expect. It's very small and split into two parts. Indeed, I couldn't but help be massively disappointed by the Delta Airlines Sky Club, as they call it in Terminal 3. The good thing is, great views of the aircraft as dawn begins to dawn at LAX. The other Delta Lounge at LAX is in the Delta Sky Club over in Terminal 2, which is a bus ride away. It's much better. It used to be run, in fact, by Air Canada. There's a large L-shaped space with abundant daylight, views of the tarmac, and a prime location on the mezzanine floor. To my surprise, even though it was still early morning, the bar staff walked around the lounge offering cocktails from a tray. At the other end of the lounge, there's a generous buffet with the airline's traditional food and beverage selection and a small self-serve bar. Of course, it's just breakfast time, although where we're heading, JFK, it's already lunchtime, which kind of justifies the cocktails. There's also access, if you've got the right kind of frequent flyer card, to the Virgin Atlantic Clubhouse just opposite the Delta Sky Club. This is a vastly different space. Light, bright and airy, like a Manhattan loft. Everything is trendy, even the bathrooms, and there are great views of the aircraft again. Unfortunately, the food here in the mornings is pretty Spartan compared to the Virgin Lounge in the evenings, when it's a delight. This morning, it was just basic pastries and cereal. Not much time to enjoy a third breakfast though, as it was approaching 11:30 and departure time for the Delta flight to New York JFK in business class, or Delta One as the airline likes to call it. Today we're flying on a Delta Boeing 767-300 series ER, the ER standing for Extended Range. The Delta One cabin on Delta's Boeing 767 is in its new style, and there is a new Delta One cabin. Business class adopts a staggered layout aboard Delta's Boeing 767, with seats in a 1-2-1 configuration, alternating between being closer to the aisle and to the window or center if you're in the middle. Every seat, of course, transforms into a bed measuring nearly 160 centimeters or 6'2" in old money. All of the seats have power, a light for attracting attention when you're reading the cocktail list, and a comfy pillow. There's a full seatback entertainment system with films and full box sets of TV series. The screen isn't the latest generation, indeed it's relatively small, but it's up to the job. There are headphones and an amenity kit. The seat, however, doesn't have much stowage, with just a pouch for the in-flight magazine, as well as a water bottle. A well-stocked to-me amenity kit is also provided. Well, push back right on time as we head to New York, and, good to see, pre-flight drinks are being served too. I was surprised at the quality and content of the to-me amenity kit for a domestic flight. Once I'd got into it, that is. All the socks, toothpaste and hand sanitizer you could possibly expect. Menus were also distributed on the ground and had a solid upmarket feel. Obviously a lot of time going into the presentation. Lunch with either meatballs, rigatoni or salmon. Ice cream as well, and a cheese board with the options for dessert. Of course, there was a fully stocked cocktail bar and a comprehensive wine list with 2 whites and 2 reds. It was quite clear, even before we began the takeoff, that this was anything but a mundane flight, and indeed, this is the flagship route for a domestic 5-hour hop from LAX to JFK. Now, Delta fly, as you'd expect, from one end of the United States to the other, and I've been looking forward to this flight for quite some time. I settled into the seat to enjoy the view. Seats are decent, but not quite as private as the main flagship Delta One suites flying to London Heathrow, but for a domestic flight it was great. And there we go, taking off to the west out of LAX and over the ocean before we double back to head to New York. Alas, I couldn't help but be a little bit unimpressed really by the in-flight entertainment. Sure, it was a touchscreen, but the film selection was very poor, and some of the box sets for the TV series were a bit on the mundane side. As for the touchscreen, well, it was a bit of a nightmare to use, sticking and refusing to slide onto the next item. Good to see some audio on there and flight information, but it was much easier to control with the old-fashioned remote under the flap in the armrest. Now a big sweeping turn as we head northwest and in for the long haul, domestic of course, over to JFK. Despite being a domestic daytime flight, Western heavenly bedding with full-size pillows are provided, including a duvet. The bar was open even before the flight leveled off. I opted for the Bon and Vin spiked grapefruit cocktail. It was absolutely lovely. Barbecue almond nuts were also offered with every meal. Now it's good to see a full-size table on this aircraft too, even if you have to move your drinks out of the way to open it. Tablecloths were laid along with proper cutlery and a small salt and pepper pot, but the meals were served on just one tray. I decided to go for the braised meatballs with ricotta and a glass of the Brown Estate Sauvignon Blanc. This was very good with hints of lemongrass plus notes of guava, lychee and honeydew melon. It was bright and crisp with the slightest hints of tannin. It went very well with the meatballs as we flew ever further east. There was a gem lettuce Caesar salad on the side and a prosciutto mozzarella appetizer. The food, indeed, was surprisingly good. Delta has clearly gone to quite some trouble in this regard over the past few years, and it was much better than I was expecting. The prosciutto in particular was a step up from the normal airline fare. Drinks can be ordered at any time, and I wanted to try the beer as we flew ever further eastward. The Gate City Brewing Freedom Fighter IPA was a little sharp on the taste buds. For dessert, there was a cheese board with Vermont Jasper Hill cheese with Wisconsin Uplands and Crestoni. I then tried the Sweetwater 420 Extra Pale Ale, and despite a rather gaudy can, it was very pleasant indeed. Snacks came around about an hour before landing with a packet of Delta Oreo biscuits. However, considering the late hour at which we were coming into JFK, a second meal service might have been more preferable. There are a couple of good red wines on board too, with the Morgan Côte de Crozes Red a standout. Then there were small packets of chocolate as we were on finals. By this point I was almost out of power and indeed stamina, come to that. There are, or rather should have been, mains power sockets plus a USB power socket at my seat. However, a good half of the sockets on the aircraft, including mine, had tape over them and a sign apologising that they just didn't work anymore. Still, we got to the ground at Idlewild on time, which in later days is now known as JFK. It was most welcome to see it as I'd arrived into LAX on a long 14-hour flight and I'd had very little sleep. And I was about to have another long overnight flight in a couple of hours with a flight to Heathrow in the offing. Still, I'd managed to keep up to speed with what was happening in the wonderful wider world. In-flight interweb access is also available, but at quite some cost. However, there is free basic messaging via Wi-Fi for every passenger. As I landed, I did wonder if it was worth paying the full fare of just over $700 for the flight compared to $200 in economy. And the answer, yes, most definitely. The seats are vastly better than the old recliners of 20 years back, even if the aircraft is of that vintage. Delta are clearly on the up and trying to improve their game. Since there was no second meal service on board, I made straight for the Delta Sky Club New York JFK lounge for a rather late dinner. The bar is there and it's still open until 11 o'clock at night. So all in all, despite a few niggles, a great flight on Delta with much to recommend it.